Thank you very much for the introduction. So as you can see, my presentation has the slightly lofty title of Moving Beyond Data to Build Back Better. There's quite a lot of buzzwords in there. So as we go through, I'll look to clarify exactly what they mean to me. But fundamentally, it's about trying to understand some of the big global challenges that we face, to set them in the context of the current pandemic, and to ask what the role of smart networks is in all of this. And I'm going to try and do that all in 15 minutes. So wish me luck. I thought I'd start by looking at the macro picture and the World Economic Forum's recent report, which highlights that it really is the growing global population and its demand for resources and the impact of a changing climate, the two biggest challenges facing the planet. But we can also see that it highlights infectious disease as one of the key risks over the next 10 years, along with water crises, loss of biodiversity, and the impact of those extremes in weather. Now, Anglian Water as a company has these challenges in microcosm, and they're absolutely central to our 25-year strategic direction statement, which we first put together in 2007 and refreshed recently. And our STS commits us to making the East of England resilient to the risks of drought and flooding, enabling sustainable economic and housing growth in what is, after all, one of the UK's fastest growing regions, being a net zero carbon business by 2030, and working with others to achieve significant improvements in the ecological quality across all of our catchments. And these are all baked into our long-term vision and plans for the future of our organisation. But in solving one global crisis, are we risking making another worse, or is it an opportunity? A solution that's been identified to the impending economic cost of the current pandemic is to stimulate the economy by building back better with a clear message: build, build, build. But building back better isn't and can't just be about build, build, build. Building houses and creating infrastructure on a vast scale will certainly help the immediate need to get people into work and to stimulate the economy. But is that really building back better? Rushing to build to solve an economic crisis does create risk. If we do it the wrong way, we could end up triggering other problems, and particularly in terms of the amount of carbon we're using and the resources that we're using up. So surely what we need is to build back smarter. So we do want to see growth, and we do want ultimately the UK to be sustainable in its growth. We want to make sure we get to net zero. We want to make sure that all the growth that's taking place in housing doesn't detract from the environment. And coming back to our strategic direction statement, one of its 4 ambitions is to ensure sustainable economic and housing growth in what is the UK's fastest growing region. So growth, yes, but not at any cost. It's crucial that we and the government, and remember that net biodiversity gain and progress to net zero are government policies too, but it's crucial that together we work on this. And the water industry is already on this journey. You can see on the slide our recent Water UK event where the roadmap to net zero was launched, where we're all trying to achieve net zero by 2030. But building sustainably means building smarter. How can we use data, analytics, sensing, and so on to make better use of existing assets rather than just jumping in to build new assets? It's really also crucial that we engage customers in this challenge. And some of the technology which we have at our disposal these days has an unprecedented way of feeding back to customers the impact that they're having on the environment. So surely that's a much more intelligent and sustainable approach to the macro challenges that we face. I said at the beginning that I tried to unpack some of those buzzwords. So what do we mean by moving beyond data? Well, fundamentally, if we want any of the smart systems we're all creating to be successful, they have to interact with the rest of the organisations that we're all part of. It's no good having amazing systems if people aren't accepting of them, they aren't trained and developed alongside them, or even where we've got old-fashioned sort of hierarchical structures which don't really recognise the role of technology in what we do. And despite the buzzwords, this isn't new thinking. The American management psychologist Harold Leavitt gave early insight to this way back in the 60s. And whilst his work was overtaken by McKinsey's 7S framework and all the rest of it, in essence, what he was trying to do was to highlight that you have to look at an organisation as an interconnected system, as a whole system where you can't just change one bit without thinking about the impact on other bits. So for smart networks and systems to be truly successful, they have to think about all aspects of the organization and not just take a narrow view of smart models or smart data. We need that holistic view. And we believe our smart network in Anglian can only be truly successful if it gives us the sort of actionable insight and it's aligned with the business goals. So we genuinely have gone beyond just thinking about the technology, and we thought about the other layers of the organization. But let's look at a tangible example of this. So how does moving beyond data and building back better apply to us? What's a real example? Well, at Anglian, one of our big challenges, it relates to the impact of that changing climate and growth in housing. So it's really important that we manage supply and demand of water. One of the key supply projects that we're working on over the next 5 years is building a huge network of up to 500 kilometres of interconnected, large diameter pipes, one of the UK's biggest ever building programmes. So it's squarely in the world of build, 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 you might think. But that infrastructure is only going to be successful because we're building it in parallel with the digital twin. And this is recognising right at the outset that data is an equivalent asset to the physical asset. And the observatory, you might notice there's a Formula One racing car on the slide. Well, Formula One have been creating, as many of you will know, and using digital twins for many, many years. And way back in 2009, I spent time at the Red Bull factory, and I was astonished to understand that they'd made some 15,000 changes to their car in the first 11 races of the season that year. And the only reason they could do that and move at that pace was because they knew it worked before they put the car on the racetrack, because of the work they'd put into their digital twin. And to this day, I was always amazed and still amazed at just the computing power that Formula One team uses. You know, their reception was essentially banks and banks and banks and banks of servers. And that was giving us early insight to really the power and the opportunity from digital twinning. We're on a similar journey. And the digital twin we're building alongside the development of the strategic pipeline is equally fundamental to the success of that project. It isn't just a pipeline, it's a system. And bringing IT and operations together with the teams building the pipeline right at the outset is a way of making sure that we realise all of the opportunities. And this means tying it into modelling software, leakage and pressure management systems, energy management systems, smart metering systems, the list goes on. So I suppose the other aspect to highlight is that we're also designing the organisation for the future at the same time, as well as the processes that we'll need to be successful. So the pipeline is just one element of that bigger picture. But if all we end up doing is laying a big, long, large diameter pipe, we will definitely have failed. So carrying on that theme, is it all about having those enormous projects, or what else can we do? Well, in our shop window, we're trying something else. So for those of you who don't know, our shop window is our incubation hub based around Newmarket, where we trial and showcase new technology and work with companies and customers to test new initiatives. And in the most recent discussions around the purpose of the shop window, we've extended it to really turn it into a test bed for the water company of the future and an opportunity to apply that diamond model and test what's possible. We're taking the technology, we're looking at the way it's operating and thinking about what the organisation needs to look like. And we're taking some of our most ambitious and forward-looking colleagues, the Future Leaders Board, which are there on the slide, to help design the organisation that we need to address the challenges of the future. And we're looking at everything from how we might tackle and repair water mains to how we work with customers to help them really actively manage their demand. Because we've already seen the benefits of bringing together behavioural programmes with technology programmes. There are parts of Newmarket now where customers are using 80 litres per head per day. So we know there's real potential in this idea of thinking about these systems much more widely than just the technology. But it's really important we also don't do these things in isolation. We need to take real care that we don't just end up with a smart water network that operates in a silo and that we learn from other areas. There's a lot of really exciting opportunities when we look at some of the smart city initiatives. In Milton Keynes, they've been working on this for many, many years, and there are other examples around the world. I was reading in the recent Institute of Water magazine an article by Robert Mankowski of Bentley Systems, And he was talking about city-scale digital twins to manage flood risk with models and 3D and live sensing. Really exciting stuff. So there's a great deal of stuff that we can learn from other areas, which we need to. So on this picture, on this slide, is the Oxcam arc. And to some extent, this is a blank bit of paper where huge amount of new growth in housing is anticipated. But we have to do that, we have to ensure that new growth doesn't compound the carbon challenges we face. We have to ensure that it doesn't detract from the environment. And one of the ways we can do that is starting with the end in mind with other utilities, and they're on the slide too. Thinking about how can we work together and perhaps create smart communities right at the outset of this exciting initiative. And that is about thinking outside of our narrow silos, and it is about learning from other examples of what's being achieved in this country and elsewhere. So in a nutshell, it's about building back better and building back smarter rather than just build, build, build. And for us at Anglian, that means going beyond the fifth layer of the SWAN model to take that holistic view in terms of the whole organisation. It's beyond just looking at new projects, but it's also about using incubator opportunities within organisations to accelerate things and look at what it really does mean for the whole organisation. About engaging younger people who really are going to be working in the organisations of the future, in envisaging that right now. And finally, ending where we started, but hopefully with a richer understanding of some of the opportunities that this opens up, we really can move beyond data to build back better.